E bella a tutti ragazzi, da quanto tempo? Come va? Tutto bene? Oggi ragazzi siamo qui per vedere i mondiali di Brawl. Non sono in compagnia di nessuno. Alziamo il volume ragazzi e si vola.
Let's talk about things that are really mixing up lately. The meta, we have a brand new brawler being introduced. We have some brawlers that have been buffed, some that have been nerfed, some that are real mainstays in the meta. Gale, anyway, yeah, I know that's a Kenny favorite, is the... Are you expecting to see a lot? Because we have the data from last month, the most picked, the most banned brawlers from the quals.
Yeah, and I always feel like LATAM South is very interesting compared to other regions. I think one note is Mr. P, like you mentioned a little bit earlier. That's somebody that even before the recent buff that he got and the latest balance changes, was somebody they kind of favor. And the reason for that is the kinds of brawlers they play. They're going to be more likely to play brawlers like B, a single-shot brawler that Mr. P does really well into. And since Mr. P gets in the mix, none other than Jesse gets in the mix a lot more in this region. So it's very interesting to see how, certain brawler decisions impact what counters people bring up, especially in a draft format. So to me, it feels like this region really prefers Jesse a lot of the times in positions where I feel like EMEA or other regions might go with Bell, and more general what the world would do. But I think in hot zone maps, I'm going to be looking out for Jesse and Mr. P. I'm going to be generally looking out for him. And of course, Fang is somebody that we can't take our eyes off of. That super is so dynamic, big time plays, and I expect to see him banned a lot here today.
Yeah, we have the stats from the quals in LATAM South, and Fang was banned exactly 100 times. And that's a real big number, considering that the second most banned brawler was like Spike, with 16 bans across the entire thing, which is absolutely insane, right? Fang is such a strong brawler, and if he manages to creep his way in there, you're pretty much guaranteed that whatever team picks up Fang is going to be having a real fun time. Now, let's talk about another brawler that's creeping onto the scene, though, Kenny. Eve. She did get a little balance change lately that lowered her range, but her star power that lets her shoot that most damage inflicting egg first, as well as the ability to spawn the minions, is super powerful.
Eve is really strong to me right now, despite the nerf, and I didn't get to watch every match of Sesa as I was asleep, resting up to make sure we could do this broadcast, but I did some quick math. I watched the replay and kind of skimmed through and took a little track. Eve was played in almost 75% of matches or banned, so one of two. Outside of 5 different sets in the entire region we saw earlier today, definitely watch the replay because it was a good one too. Only 5 times she didn't show up or get banned, so to me, even though...
No.
As to the strengths of a brawler.
Mannaggia miseria.
Brawlers definitely get their chance to make their debut, but on Bounty, you're not going to really be seeing those guys at all. Eve can work on both Brawl Ball and, like... to ban in our matches today. Of course, that is if we are not considering Fang. So I think there's going to be a little bit of like teeter-totter, like are we going to ban Fang, are we going to ban Eve? Kind of depends on whether we get first pick or second pick. Kenny, sometimes players are like, okay, well I get the first pick, so I'm going to ban the second best brawler. But then who's the best brawler? Is it Eve? Is it Fang? It's really subjective. I think it's going to introduce an interesting dynamic for our pick phases today.
For sure, and you got to think too, depending on the map and the mode, to say maybe it's not Eve's strongest, but, how strong do they feel like Eve is overall? Is it enough to ban her, or are they going to focus on somebody that's very good on that map? Mr. P is somebody we brought up earlier, a very general player that shows up a lot here in LATAM South. They're going to prioritize doing things like that. Byron's somebody we've seen a lot across the world. I think it's going to depend on the map and the mode a little bit. To me,
Ragazzi, vai.
Instantly be a problem. Is just a little bit, but even then, Eve's gadget is a getaway opportunity every single strong sharpshooter brawler, and really her only downfall that I've seen so far is just that really slow reload speed. But if you can keep your bounty, can kind of play into that more passive-aggressive category, right? Sometimes teams are going to be looking to just hang tight, get the kills that they need, and that's where Eve's going to shine the most. But we could see some really fun plays like we saw earlier today, where we're passing the brawl ball forward up, hitting the little gadget to bounce forward, jump over some enemy players and walls, and really knocking a goal. So I think Eve's going to show up a lot here today. I think it's going to be really fun to watch and see how these players treat the newest brawler.
All right, well, if you came here for some Brawl Stars, wait no longer. We got match number 1 coming up on the horizon. We'll see if exactly Eve comes into play, whether she's banned out, whether the Fang is banned out too. Of course, it's Arena Casito versus WJM. Now, Kenny, we put in our predictions. We thought, both of us, that Arena Casito was going to take this one, but we have seen some pretty good stuff from successful are the ones that are able to adapt to this very quickly changing meta. The buffs and buffs, those balance changes just coming in a few days ago. I think that there's a lot of room for upset here.
Yeah, known with WJM, right? 2 of the 3 players are first time to BSC, but they have had some success here. You know, it's not easy to make it to one of these 8 spots. So either way, they had to fight through some really good rosters. They upset Zacron, which was a team last month that showed up, and they did really, really well. So I think they have a really good chance here to do some work. Arena Casito, for me, though, has been a very strong team. You know, they made it all the way to the grand finals last month, lost 3-1 to AQM. And it really had some pretty solid performances overall. To get here, too, they defeated KIB, who is here in this bracket here today. So I think Arena Casito is my favorite in this matchup. But again, you know, we haven't seen a lot from WJM in the BSC yet from at least some of these individual players. So definitely potential for them to really pull off an upset. And I hope to have see a really strong debut for them.
Yeah, I feel like Arena Casito and AQM could be the El Clasico of LATAM South, especially because we do see AQM on the other side of the bracket today. And it seems like we always kind of need, right, that like boss matchup in the grand finals. Is it going to be him versus them? Is it going to be SK versus AQM? I guess is it going to be Arena Casito versus the other AQ, if you will? This is going to be a real interesting story. Also with AQM dropping Pekka here, actually. I wonder if that is going to mix things up a little too. Of course, we'll have to get into the games to see that. And this all hinges on whether they make it to the grand finals to begin with. We got a whole lot of Brawl Stars between then and now, if that happens to begin with, right? I love having my predictions be incorrect, as strange as that sounds. Of course, I do want to get the shredder pin, but still, I love the developments within the scene. Kenny, I think I can say the same for you, but I'm curious to hear, what are your thoughts on the rest of the bracket? Because we have Arena Casito versus WJM coming up soon, but we got some other great matches coming up for us today.
Yeah, I think a real one that I'm looking forward to is seeing Renegados versus Chasmic Gaming. I think a lot of teams entering the gear just due to the players' success in previous years. You know, Chasmic Gaming's roster was previously, you know, INTZ, who was really successful in Worlds. But I think one thing that's kind of interesting to me is that looking back, you know, the last 2 months, at the time Aphelion roster, which has some of the players from AQM here today, were last month's champions. They won 2 in a row against Chasmic, which was then INTZ. A little confusing, but the same players. Which was really interesting to me. And then when they got to Worlds, you know, INTC had the success, but I looked back and I was like, well, why, you know, I feel like they've been playing really well. Who did they match up against? And they faced none other than Zeta in round 1. So who knows, if they traded spots, success could have been different, the same. You know, I feel like these teams are definitely having a good chance as well. So I feel like there's still a question mark for me on Chasmic Gaming, and I've been impressed with Renegados recently. So the match directly after this, man, I think could be a really good one too.
All right, let's bring it back to match number 1. We're taking a look at the map that's going to kick us off for the LATAM South Monthly Finals here in April. And of course, it's going to be dueling beetles. We have our friend the Snake in the back left. I know a few of my friends who look like that guy, but let's talk about the hot zone too, because we got some lanes that are available to us. We got mid, we got the left and right, and open all the walls and make the map look nothing like dueling beetles in the first place.
Really interesting that you mentioned that, because this region favors B, and a classic strategy even before, you know, going with a draft format was in the blind format. We would see brawlers like Colt, Griffin, B come out in certain hot zone maps. You know, we see it here sometimes with Golden Beetles, and that could potentially be a thing, especially with Brock being more relevant these days. I know this region does enjoy Piper a decent amount too, compared to brawlers like Bell. You know, they could go for that wall break strategy, really open things up. I think it's hard to pull that off sometimes, just due to the draft format now. You know, they can anticipate what's coming, they can see more of the full picture rather than just going with the blind format. But the wall break is definitely an option depending on what the enemy team picks, and it's something to look at for sure when going through that draft process, you know, learning how to counter the enemy side.
Yeah, that draft process, we are going to have to speculate here. We actually are having a few issues getting wind of what exactly is going on in the draft, but we're going to touch on that later and get back into the draft for our following matches. For now, though, it's all speculation, Kenny. We could see the Colt B. That's like the tried, tested, and true strategy. But I don't know about that one, right? I think Brock is still a viable brawler. Of course, we're not going to see any of those brawlers that we talked about just a moment ago, but we do get to see the lad himself, classic Toxic, on the bottom right-hand side of your screen is going to be pulling out the Mr. P versus Byron. Mid-control early on, going to go to Arena Casito. They're also pulling out that Jesse that you mentioned as well.
Yeah, and it looks like Eve and Fang were the bands coming in as well. So in terms of draft, this one plays out kind of exactly how I would expect for LATAM South. We're going to see the Mr. P and the Jesse. And Jesse, like I mentioned earlier, shows up on a lot of hot zone maps here, whereas the rest of the world would probably lean more towards the Bell, just for the overall great kit. You start out here, this is one of the reasons they love it so much. You can get that turret off, a lot of value, but they destroy the wall instantly, which might be one of the reasons they actually go with the Colonel Ruffs, that wall break strategy that you were mentioning. They look like they have introduced it as a way to try and deal with that. Nice takedown there onto the Jesse as well. Good trade. And for now, Arena Casito going to be holding down at the mid.
Christian.
Good stuff. Crow is definitely one of the best brawlers to be pulling onto mid. We're going to see Christian actually rotate on the right side and then back up. Definitely needed to distance himself as far as he possibly could from Byron. Going to be hanging on by a thread as well, but it doesn't matter. The health pool from this team is just too much for Byron to deal with. Good combo there with Toxic and a kill onto Byron. WJM are having a real rough time getting on this point, especially Jay as he gets taken down on the right side. We see a lot of single target brawlers from WJM. Arena Casito running much the opposite. They got some splash damage in form of Mr. P on Toxic, and they have Casito also on the Jesse. Some multi-target brawlers that are going to be really good for dealing with any kind of turrets, as well as exploiting times when enemies are grouped up close together. So we see the health pool being used as an advantage here by Arena Casito, and the total opposite by WJM.
Yeah, and I think Byron is a really strong brawler, but in this particular matchup, it's not necessarily healing anybody particularly well. You know, there's some lower HP brawlers on their side, and he's a solid individual brawler as well, but I feel like the Jesse can address the life plan from Spike and the sandbags from Colonel Ruff, so that's going to be a very favorable matchup. Mr. P is somebody this region really favors, and just going against single-shot brawlers like Byron can do really well. And Crow's somebody I'm a big fan of on this map overall, somebody in the meta in general I think goes slept on a lot of the time. So overall, I'm just thinking
dove si butta, mamma mia, corre come il Caivano. Ottima Jesse però in questa mappa. Christian, attenzione, rimane in vita, mamma mia Jesse. Change da Mr. P, è capito subito. Mamma mia che kill, mamma mia ragazzi. Subito. No, quella subito ragazzi, vincono? Vincono già il primo set? Sì, mi sa. Attenzione. Ottima kill, quasi. Leono Christian da mezzo. Attenzione, ma sono Mr. P? Dai pura vita, tranquillo. Pinguino che l'aiuta. Christian sta dentro là. C'ha un'altra campana. Ok, killato Byron. Possono approfittare. Pusha Christian, mamma mia ragazzi, Christian. Attenzione. Peccato. Mamma mia, ancora. Christian, se li fa tutti e due, no? Attenzione, Christian sotto Jesse. Attenzione, pinguino? Che dare fastidio? Mr. P, prova. 50 secondi. Campana alla centrale per fare. Oddio, ottimo. Chiuso. Hanno vinto? GG. Da qui. Ah, eccolo Christian.
Face. That is the face of a cold-blooded killer. That's a face of a Jesse that's not afraid to take out every single one of your sandbags and just a single shot pinning.
Yeah, I'm not messing with that guy, I'll be honest. I saw that guy in the brawl field. I know my place. I am not winning that matchup. And a really good draft overall for them. I think it played out how it should have on paper, right? I think in terms of matchups, it really favored AQ, who we had as the favorites coming into today. So those are the kinds of things we expect. I think if WJM can kind of address their draft phase a little bit here on Hard Rock Mine, you know, they're still in it. It's hard to say, just given that going into it, I really anticipated that the AQ comp was just going to be better. So maybe if they can come up with a more even draft, you know, we can really see what this team's got in them.
Yeah, this is true, right? We have to consider what's going on in the draft phase, because the entire match is not won in the draft phase usually, right? And we did see some good comebacks from the side of WJM throughout the course of that second game. They definitely found their footing to a degree. Problem is that I think they were still out-comped. Now, they have another set to work with at minimum, but should they lose the first game, they're already looking at a match point, which is not a great feeling to get potentially 2-0, 2-0'd. By Reazione, maybe a bit of a different story. This is like a probably world-class roster. Of course, it's pretty early in the season, so kind of a big call to make. But Hard Rock Mine, I think this is going to be a good equalizer. This map has been in the game for a very long time. This is a very well-understood game mode, a very well-understood map. The meta is very well understood as well. Can you take us through some of the brawlers that you expect to see on Hard Rock Mine?
Yeah, I think this one's an interesting one. I think there's a few different directions they can go. You know, you have to keep in mind Eve is now introduced as well. That's something we haven't seen in the past, which I can easily see getting banned, and if not banned, played here pretty early on. But some bans that, you know, LATAM South, or just some early picks that they're going to be making on this map in particular. Fang is somebody I expect to see either gone or picked up early. Colonel Ruffs, Mr. P, those are kind of a few that align with what I think will go down here. Ruffs is also somebody that is aligned with what most of the world does here. And for mids, I think the key one to look for is 8-bit. You know, I think a lot of the globe is really starting to adapt and pick him up. A lot of the times you'll see that right-hand wall more towards the mid, where the gyms spawn. A lot of the times they'll put down the 8-bit turret there. It's a very safe place to throw it down. They can get really aggressive for a moment, go grab some gyms, and then just safely teleport away. So those are a few that are some LATAM South-inspired picks more than anything, and then just some that the globe really goes.
Ma sì, qua nel team rosso non è soltanto forti, da come vedo. Oddio, chi hanno votato? Ok, aia, ma la stecca. Così del capitano. CR capitano.
But really his main counter is going to be Bell, actually. If he doesn't put his turret in a safe location, we can see that attack repeatedly bounce back and forth. Here the bans, though, we'll see the E ban and the Rico ban.
Non vedo perché c'è sta cosa.
WJM definitely
Ma credo che sia.
Rico is a mainstay brawler on this map.
Ok, Mr. P.
If you've ever seen Rico on Hard Rock Mine, it's plain to see why. He's able to shut down a tank on a lane. He's able to
trap che sia colonnello. Credo che sia colonnello. No, non credo.
Yeah, and understandably too, I think Mr. P is going to be a solid
pick here. Mr. P da parte avversario. Una bella, ok. Vediamo.
But I really feel like Bell's overall kit can be very useful, just in the sense that you can drop down the nest eggs by where the gyms spawn, you get the long range capabilities, the bounce shots do the same job as Jesse's.
Mentre Piper, cosa serve Piper sta mappa vorrei a dire però.
That's something that this region really still likes to go towards.
Ovviamente Christian ha messo
away from more recently.
Vediamo cosa scegliono i capitani. Busito di chi va?
And also, Piper's going to be a great way to address Bell in general. Faster reload speed, more damage from a longer distance, slightly more range. So in terms of sharpshooter 1v1 battles, Piper into Bell is a pretty solid matchup.
Fang, ottima scelta.
Mr. P here because Mr. P is often picked after Piper, right, as a counter to Piper.
Qua secondo me un Sandy lo mettono, sono sicuro, me lo sento che lo mettono questo Sandy. Grazie per chi è live. Stavolta l'ho fatto 50.000 volte in Power League, sempre vinto, quando uno delle mie comprare. Però Tara, Umbra e Torbit tipo.
Most times, I mean, first of all, they already have a
ecco ci vuole scegliere.
Mortis is a really good counter to Piper, and he's not going to do too well versus Fang. I definitely see the Daryl working here. We can see a potential interaction where Fang uses super to get into Daryl.
Allora, sicuramente Fang andrà su Belly, Piper su Bell e l'altro che ha messo là su Mr. P. Sicuro. Vediamo.
Apparently a scary brawler right now, but I think if they lane this right,
infatti era colonnello.
shot at this. I think ideally the Bell matchup into the
votiamo ragazzi, sono sempre criticati, quindi sapevo che chi sta mettendo a Fang. Oh, mi c'è P-lag? Lag, aspetta, in teoria non è contro le regole però, è lag. Ma lagga, non vale, lagga. Non sta giocando malissimo. No, ma sta giocando malissimo quello. Madonna, Gulito. No, ma non vale, contro le regole sta laggando quello, mi sa. Mi sa che sta laggando. No, raga, Christian, no, come ha fatto a morire? Ok, si è svegliato Mr. P. Ma cos'era quell'altro? Bello. Attenzione Christian. Madonna che kill. Oh raga, bello entrare di mod. Attenzione, prende le gemme. Se ne vola? Via via. Quella Piper mi piace come cecchina, Mamma mia, raga, fango però, Guardalo, guarda! Guarda Christian! Ma che cos'è Christian? Ma che cos'è Christian? Che cos'è Christian? Ma che cos'è Christian? Ma giù, ma che cos'è? Io voto Christian. Ma raga, chi non vota Christian come migliore? Ma hanno vinto. Ok, vedo che Mr. P si è risvegliato. Sì, mi sa di sì. Madonna, raga, bello però. Contro Piper, non è che può fare tanto. Piper contro Bell. Non è che Piper abbia fare qualcosa. Oh, attenzione, pressing. Morto colonnello? Cioè, ucciso? Aia, attenzione. Lane persa? Ma subito colonnello si vuole vendere. Mamma mia, Christian. Cos'è Christian? Oh ragazzi, attenzione, sto bello, li sono tutti. Il pingu. Aia, il pingu fa male. Ma ragazzi, cos'è? Cristi? Aia, minchia. Li hanno un po' fottuti, Cristo, oddio, Cristo. No raga, che cazzo ha fatto? Potrebbe prenderle. Cuore Cristo. No, Cristo. Sta toxic. Che toxic. No raga, hanno sbagliato loro. Erano troppo chiusi. Oh. Cristi carica su l'altri. C'era Mr. P.
But with all of this trade back and forth, maybe a few more countdown interruptions, Rina Casito could actually pick up
Bush. Mamma mia,
start a countdown of their own and tie the count here.
Che cazzo fa quello? Va in bocca. Ma Rip Colonnella che è morto 30.000 volte. No, errore, hanno fatto sbagliato loro là. Erano chiusi. Dai ragazzi, dai. Tranquilli, tranquilli.
You can see Jay's, he's not showing it, but if I were him, I would definitely be happy with my Daryl gameplay on that game. Definitely a core element of the success of WJM in that last game.
Tranquilli, raga, tranquilli.
Yeah, for sure. And now we hop into game number 3. We'll see if it plays out similarly to the second. I think it was really well overall from WJM. And my biggest takeaway is, as long as Fang has a super, there is hope. They reset that countdown several times. So when they had it in their favor, WJM really had to tread lightly and have to be careful to hold onto those gyms for dear life. But they played it well, did exactly what they're supposed to, and now it's a 1-1 opportunity to tie things up.
All right, well, let's see how this Mr. P matchup goes on the left side. Toxic is not going to be taking any damage.
Mamma mia, Christian, raga, ma che cazzo sta fa questo? Sì, vabbè.
One kill and, well, unfortunate, not the greatest.
Povero colonnello. Ma io vediamo un colonnello. No, è morto. Qui che cazzo pushi? Qui cosa pushi?
Jay picks up an easy kill. Weepy gonna circle back.
Madonna.
Be the gym carrier by the looks of things. Meanwhile, Gasito keeps on breaking open these walls.
Cri qua potrebbe soltanto pushare con l'altro. Madonna, raga, ha
Big
fatto una cosa
play,
sì, vabbè, ma che combinazione di squadra giocano questi qua. Come si vota, ragazzi?
Yeah, the problem is though that Fang does have the range to close the gap between somebody like Mr. P
io
and Bell.
quel gualito sta fa quell'itmo cazzo si è agusito.
Daryl getting aggressive as well. Gasito going to be forced away, and they can tie things up now. Really strong performance, I feel like, this game for WJ, and they turned this around after a slow start in the first one.
Ma c'entrati però,
Yeah, this is incredibly amazing for WJM. It's a challenging matchup for
no, merda, ha fatto morire il compagno.
Facing Piper. It's very, very challenging, but that single
Killa subito, ottima la
kill is going
kill.
to allow Weepy to push forward a little bit. We're going to have to see, actually, Weepy play very cautiously. This Christian could pick up a super.
Però il colonnello potrebbe piazzare un guardo.
On the right side and pick up a kill. And
no!
we're going to see Christian get the kill on the back lines for Arena Casito.
No, è morto. Oddio. Madò. Cristian subito. Su bello. La killa. Oddio, Chris. Chris, cosa cazzo ha fatto? Cosa ha fatto Chris? Che cazzo ha fatto Chris? Cosa ha fatto Chris?
Yeah, I think WJM put up a really good fight there, though. The Daryl
Cosa
actually, I think, made a good call, aborted mission, and saw that Fang had about 200 HP and enough gems to get a reset. So tried to get over there in time. Fang was just enough away, though, to where they couldn't get it done. Very close match overall. I think they did a great job. And a pretty strong performance overall. You know, Hot Zone wasn't necessarily their set, but I think Hard Rock Mine really could have gone either way, especially in that third game. There was a lot of back and forth, a lot of resets in that second one. So I expect to see more from this team in future months, too. I definitely have the chance to keep coming back and making it to these top 8 teams. But of course, we did expect Arena Casito. They're a very strong team in this region. Somebody we're looking out for us to even make it to a grand final here today. So I think so far so good in terms of predictions.
GG per loro, dai, poverini.
Yeah, definitely on the predictions point. Definitely excited to be grabbing some of those points as well towards my great stuff. Love that match. We got match number 2 coming up right after.
Qua dobbiamo dare il migliore a Christian, sicuro.
But reflecting on our last match,
Christian, sicuro, se lo merita.
I think that this was really good from WJM. We have, we had our doubts coming in. Then Hot Zone was kind of confirmed, but they seemed to get better and better and better as the match went on, and we very realistically could have seen a knockout set. Wonder how that would have gone.
Il team. Miku, GXR e Wepi.
Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, in terms of what the most likely upset kind of set is, it's going to be the newest game mode. It's the freshest to all the new players. And there's a way to take that to where,
adesso vediamo ragazzi il Regend Fight contro il Chess Bacon
we're still figuring out a lot of the meta for these newer maps, how they play out. I've seen new strategies come in for several of the maps recently in several different regions, so it's still developing, still a lot of creativity that can come in. Anytime there's a draft, it's just going to be a unique one every single time. You never know what you're going to get. So each player's kind of got to stay on their toes and adjust, and I think WJM did much better in that second one. I think they show some promise, and you know, the more experience they get in these big matches, the better they'll get.
Yeah, well, we can only hope to see them in the next monthly final. So long for now, and hello to Renegados FA and Chazmat Gaming BR. It's time for quarterfinals match number 2. And these are both teams that we haven't seen in the past. Renegados free agents, Chazmat Gaming BR. Chazmat Gaming BR, I can say we've definitely seen a lot of them, not just this year, but also last year and then the year before that. Right, same roster, different name. This is INTZ with a fresh coat of paint. So definitely are expecting to see a lot from these guys today. Renegados, a bit of a different story. We've seen them in the past. We've seen them do well. The challenge is going to be going up versus this former INTZ roster.
Yeah, I've been impressed with the way that Renegados has played. It's also a similar roster to what we saw last year, and they had a lot of success in this region. You know, Doritos, one of their players, played in 5 monthly finals, 4 of them with Renegados, and even won one. So I think there's just a lot of success here, even though they haven't taken, you know, as many, say, monthly championships as some of the players on Chazmat Gaming's roster. I think they have a really good shot here. I think recently they've played really well, and I've kind of got some question marks about Chazmat Gaming right now. You know, that you can't put away the success they've had in the past, past seasons, world finals. You know, they've had some great success in this game, but at least more recently, they haven't been necessarily playing in those big time matches and third-party events. They've been kind of middle of the pack for me against Clash last month. They did lose the matchup, which everyone was really looking forward to. So I think they still have the potential and 100% could take it away and even win a monthly final here today, but I just haven't seen it quite yet this year from them. So I do think this actually has the chance to be decently competitive. I think Renegados are no slouches. They've been in these situations before. They have some really established players in this region, so I'm really looking forward to this. This is one of the ones for the entire, you know, world that I was kind of keeping my eye on.
Dai ragazzi, dai, mi servono quei più 100.
Yeah, this is definitely the potential beginning of a new come-up for Renegados FA because, like you said, I totally agree. They're not slouches, right? They're not, you know, they're putting in the work. They just haven't been performing to their usual degree as of late, but that can all change right now. And versus Chazmat Gaming and BR, this would be the perfect opportunity. In the quarterfinals, right, it's the easiest place to get an upset. Of course, by comparison, you're still playing versus the top shelf teams from your region, but with just 3 sets to play and only 2 sets that you need to win instead of 3, it's totally possible. We got our first map, and it's a classic shooting star.
Quando è di un semino vai per Dyron oppure semino Bea Brock, semino sicuramente Mr. P pure.
If you're able to get a nanny pick, Kenny.
Però visto che non sono nelle loro teste,
this is a really mechanically skilled map, so I think both sides are really going to have to show what they've got. Typically it's some sharpshooter skills, but recently I've kind of seen it be, you know, a little here and there with that. When the draft comes into the mix, you know, you start bringing the counter picks. You know, somebody picks Piper. I've seen a lot of Pam in the mix. I've seen some Max in the mix here. And Nani is definitely one that I expect to be, if not picked first overall, to be banned. It's one of the most globally banned across the world in this map. I think Nani is very, very strong here. And honestly, I've even still seen a lot of Fang bans on this map, which a lot of people might be a little surprised with. But honestly, just given the super, he can get those last-second takedowns, and that's kind of how it goes. Obviously, Eve being introduced this month as well. Those are probably the 3 bans I'm looking for right now.
Well, we're definitely getting a little bit comfortable here as we are moving into the draft. I definitely say that's a way to send a statement, right? And say like, nah, man, I'm not worried. Here's an Annie ban. Cheat ban is well, actually. No vengeful spirits today, and that peep action either, which is going to allow actually Eve and Fang to be played. Fang is one that you mentioned, Kenny. I think that as a super long-range brawler, as well as one that has a very long-range super and is great at dealing with squishy brawlers, this is definitely a possible pick for like a final pick, like a counter pick, or also the last couple of brawlers pick. Chazmat Gaming could be picking that as one of their brawlers. We already see the Piper response in form of Belle and Eve.
Yeah, and one thing to note too, a lot of the times we could see brawlers like Tick or Sprout coming here, but you kind of have to be a little wary, especially if
Guarda,
like
ho
Sprout,
predicato.
because there's spawners on the field. It takes up shots from Sprout, and it can be a little more difficult to deal with, but it does do really well into those sharpshooter brawlers. Byron doesn't really surprise me here. This is one that globally is picked pretty often here. And again, Fang is somebody that I'm not necessarily looking for. I don't think it's ever going to be really a first pick on this map. I think it's kind of one of those situations, like you mentioned, you're either banning it, you either just don't want to deal with it, you want to put it off the board, you're like, I don't want to deal with this super powerful the long distance, able to get those kills and cycle them out. Or you take it as a last pick to have an aggressive brawler in your back pocket. So we'll see what they like to do on the side of Renegados. I like the Tick pick here. I think if you're going to pick a thrower, that's the one to go with in this situation, especially considering Eve's on the field now. And I'm really excited to see how Eve plays out here. This is the first time today we're going to get to see her in action.
Hanno bannato X.
Yeah, this is going to be interesting.
Questa mappa era buonissima.
Could be pretty powerful if you're
Che
running that
raggio,
first star
sì.
power that allows you to immediately charge your super off of taking down an enemy. You can just spam that super button, auto aim it into all of Eve's little minions that she spawns from her super, and then go for Eve right in the end. We actually are going to see that final pick of Brock from Renegados, and now all of our brawlers are locked in. They just got to choose their star powers in gadgets. I think it's pretty clear, though, what those gadgets are going to be. From Byron, it's definitely going to be the second gadget now. From Tick, going to be going with Last Hurrah, just a little bit of extra survivability. We'll see if Tick actually tries to get the middle star here. It's going to be Tufa tasked with that.
Bello
He's going to
quell'hit.
do his best to keep him out of that
Ma che
area.
cazzo ha fatto,
For a
bro?
little while, it's going to work very, very effectively, though. Tufa keeps
Allora,
on weaving his way in to grab that first
come
star.
comp
And if Chazmat
sono
Gaming
tutte e
manages to grab
due
the first star,
ottime.
they will basically
Aumentando
wear the
di
pants for the
range
beginning of this match.
loro.
Yeah, that blue star can make a huge
Oppure
difference in how
uguale,
aggressive a
credo
team
di
really
sì.
feels
Tic già
like
la
they need to get,
potrebbe
but
dire
it's
un
not gonna
gadget.
be easy. I love Yubi's decision here. I think that's a great last pick. Good takedown though. And now they're going to be in a little bit of a situation as they also
Quella Ivy è
played
brava a
the blue
schivare,
star. Tufa
si vede.
managed to grab it, but the Brock's gonna
Ma
look
adesso
at these
l'ho
walls and
gufato,
really
l'ho
plays the
gufato,
strength
Eric.
of Renegado's
Oh,
composition,
ancora,
right?
mamma mia,
They can
raga,
now use a
quel...
full
come
long-range
cazzo
map.
si chiama?
Tufa's so
Uè, che
good.
predict che hanno
From
fatto?
having that wall there as a little
vabbè.
protection, just get some free chip shots and
Mirino,
fire
come
pro
cazzo si
and another
chiama?
takedown too.
Tufa? Ah, quello mi sa che fare
Really
pro.
good. The mechanics looking
Ma-
super good on the Piper side, who's gonna have a favorable
Marcellai,
matchup with Bill, and
Marcellai,
Byron getting
dico.
some much needed tags as well.
No, ma Marcella... sì, tu Marcelline. Io tipo per fare pro. Si invertono. Aia, aia. Quasi ammazzano due di loro, sono fottuti. No, devo cambiarsi lei, non fare pro e Piper. Ok, beccato, l'ha beccato, ok, ottimo. No, Fire Crow, Fire Crow, Fire Crow, Fire Crow, oddio, Fire Crow. L'ha beccato dietro al muro. Vado. Aia. Aia. Sì, vabbè. Oddio, Fire Crow. Madonna, Fire Crow.
Great heals there from Fire Crow too to manage to stay up. The Tick head approaching as well. And Renegados are all overall just very weak with the 10-second countdown, kicking in the spawners.
Sì, vabbè. Sì, vabbè, povero Fire Crow, però.
Fire Crow hangs around in the corner while Tufa and Marcel go stage right, and they're going to be hanging in there. A very
Da,
convincing.
poverino, è stato messo all'angolo.
Great game number one, especially for
GG.
Chazmac. Renegados definitely had their moments, right? Had the game gone on for just a little bit longer, had they had maybe 30 more seconds, they absolutely could have taken this one back, right? Because we saw them push Chazmac
Perché aprono?
very,
Cioè,
very effective.
il vantaggio è
The thing
loro.
is, though, that Chazmac is very effective at pushing for that blue star.
Cambio
Now,
lane, no?
it looks like Renegados
Che
can
volevi
actually
già stavo
be getting their
rischiando.
hands on that blue star.
No.
We do see right lane fall back a lot. That's going to open
Calmate,
things up for
ragazzi.
Tufa. He's not going to quite commit to it yet. Chazmac Gaming wants to see if they can get a kill out of this beginning interaction.
Oddio,
It's not
Ivy.
going to happen quite yet, as Jureg does get a good amount of damage
Ma quello
on
potrebbe
himself.
subito andare a prendere la stella al centro, eh?
Minute 20 seconds in, still no kills for either team. Still
Ottimo il tic. Vedi, infatti cambiano la lane. E infatti, vedi, cioè, già da prima dovrebbero cambiare lane. Oh, hanno preso la stella, mi sa. Sì, la prendeva Fire Crow. Però porca miseria. Sì, vabbè, come si chiama? Lines. Sì, ho detto bene. Madonna, che pro. Oh, segui,
I think they're just both sides are trying to play to the best matchups. Ideally, we're putting Piper on the bell, so they're going to be kind of looking to get out of that situation.
È dato una botta proprio, nonno.
Going to be doing his best just to play in the mid here, do
No,
whatever he can.
ma se devo unire fra.
He can kind of keep a comfortable distance and make it difficult with those mines for either side to move forward. As now Doritos is forced all the way back. Firecrow can push forward a little bit and help the team out as Piper is pushed back away.
Big hits from Doritos on the right side. Firecrow does heal himself up though. He's running that first edge and give himself a little bit more space. Big hits from Doritos though.
Attenzione che blocca l'alti. Oh mio dio, molto Firecrow. Vabbè, cosa cambia fra?
Firecrow goes down, 10 seconds left.
Vabbè, te lo modifico dopo. Come hanno vinto? No, cacchio. Oh, 1-1? Oh, come? Come 1-1? Grazie. Dai.
Yeah, good second game
Come
for them
1-1?
there. I feel like they adjusted really well. They tried to get the more favorable matchups. And again, Hero did a great job. You know, Eve does have a
ma quella Eve si salva sempre per una di quelle fortune. Ma quella Eve si salva una di quelle fortune. No, Firecrow, stai giocando malissimo, però dai, non ti emozionavo. No. Ma io, quello fa dei predict assurdi.
Ready, you might be muted, not sure, but either way, gonna hop in.
Alright. It happens.
Oggi combatto l'uovo di Pasqua. Ok, easy per te.
We didn't get to see him.
Allora, devono esistere 1 minuto e 13. Oppure la PER dovrebbe fare un predict. Se fa il predict su Bell, a posto. Madonna, raga, ma che cazzo fa questo? No! Oh mio dio. Ok. No, Firecrow. Madonna. Allora, sei da 2 bot. Non può spaccare, se lo rischio. Attenzione, Firecrow. Oh mio dio, l'ha attaccato. Cacchio, mo Firecrow sbicciato qua. No, è morto, mi sa quello. Io se lo cacchio, lo sapevo. L'ha attaccato. Cacchio ride, come ridono sta gente di merda che ride. Togli la gente che ride. Firecrow, mannaggia a te che sei morto. No, Firecrow, no, Firecrow, no, che forte, fra. Ah, errore.
Chazmag, they're still not able to bring it back. 5-6 on that final count. And Doritos is smiling wide. Definitely popped off. I would say if I had to choose an MVP last set, it would undoubtedly be Doritos. It's going to take us straight into set number 2 for some pinhole punt.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I really expected this to be a more competitive matchup than people gave it credit for, and Renegato's proving it right there. Now we're going to have to see what Chazmik can pull up here. This is a team that was really heavily favored in the region overall coming into the year. They've got it in them. They've showed it before, but it is a new format. Nothing's free, and again, Renegatos has been around in this region. They've caused a lot of disruptions in the past, and these are some really talented players. So Chazmik's going to have to be on top of their game as well here as we move into pinhole punt.
Yeah, I think the bans might have been a little bit surprising in that last set as well, right? Because I think players, you know, they're very used to the Fang, they're very used to, like, the Eve bans, and neither of those were banned, and both of them definitely could have done really well. In fact, we did get to see the Eve action, and it worked out pretty well, I would say, no matter how the match went in the end. And I think we could definitely see her on pinhole punt. Some brawlers that I'm expecting to see on pinhole punt, though, I think that Crow is absolutely indispensable. He's pretty much the go-to brawler here, to the degree that I think he could even be banned, Kenny.
I agree with that 100%. Coming into last month, too, that was a brawler on pinhole punt. that I'd heard a lot of good things from pros, seen a decent amount in scrims, and it definitely proved right, as it is one of the most picked globally. Fang going to be another one I think is a great candidate to ban here. Eve, of course, we kind of got to go through some of the more givens, but I do think Crow is a good one to watch out for here. I think in this region particularly too, it could definitely be a ban. And I don't think you're crazy at all for say that great area control can deal with a lot of different compositions that are aggressive, with the slowing toxin gadget. You can really hold any enemy push you want. Max combos can't come into play here as much and things like that too. Aggressive brawlers will have a harder time. So I think Crow overall is a really solid pick here. I don't think that's crazy at all.
Yeah, and let's also talk about gears here as well, because speed gear gives you more speed. When you're in bushes, you have that large area of bushes in mid. And I feel like gears we haven't really talked about a whole lot in BSE. It's usually about like the new balance changes or the new gadgets or the new star powers or brawlers. But now gears could really come into play here. Typically we don't talk about them because it's pretty given which ones you're going to be running. You're going to be running damage and shield, or you're going to be running damage and speed. Here, speed is definitely going to be a trade-off. It's, I think, pretty much indispensable for playing mid. It's going to make the mid game a little bit inconsistent compared to before we had gears, because it's pretty hard to tell how exactly fast a brawler is able to go with that huge speed boost that you get from being in a bush.
Yeah, it's a great call out. It is something that kind of goes, it's an unsung hero of the game right now. There's a little strategy into it. I definitely think the speed gear is one that we should expect to see on pinhole punt. For most brawlers, really, there's not too many that I could think of here that wouldn't benefit from it, because at some time you're probably going to be entering either these side two lanes or that giant square in the middle to try and claim the ball or just push forward in general. So that's a really good point as well. It does add a new dynamic to the game, and is something we didn't have in last year's gameplay, so it is a really fun one to kind of see take place as well.
And of course, we are getting that draft phase started as well. As far as what brawlers you expect to see here, definitely hoping to see some tanks.
Fire Crow,
Fire Crow,
svegliati, siamo a 3-2, mannaggiate.
up here in
Io
just
se
a
venissi qua no,
But what's the other
mi sa
ban
100
going to be
punti.
besides Crow,
60
right? It's
punti mi
either going to
mancano.
be Eve or it's going to be Fang. That's pretty much how the meta goes. You always see two
Qui siamo
powerful
Fire
brawlers
Crow, guarda un po'.
that are
Ragazzi, ti
usually
ha
would be
bannato
banned, right?
Corvo,
You can see the Byron ban. Interesting. But we also see the Crow ban, which we both mentioned. And this is going to allow both teams to play Eve and Fang if they so wish.
Yeah, Byron is not typically a go-to ban for the BLAW here, but I definitely think that it's a really strong one. Typically one of the most played brawlers on this map, especially as a mid. Just a very flexible one, so I don't blame them for taking that off the board. It does, of course, leave Fang open. Leon is very notable in this region. That's kind of where my head was at, to be honest with you. I don't love it into Spike necessarily, but I do think, just given what I've seen from this region, they pick Leon a lot here. I even seen him be first picked overall, which is something that I don't think I would expect to see in other regions, and is a good brawler here, but does shock me a little bit of how much they love him in that early on in drafts. We're not going to see Eve come through. The Bell going to be a solid pick as well to go into the Spike life plant and the spawners of Eve, so I think that'll actually be a pretty favorable pick there for Chasmic Gaming. And we'll see what pick number 5 comes in as a moment. I could see it being a few things. We have the Spike coming through. I would be less lenient on the roughs now, which is something this region does a lot. Which is really good on this map. But there are no tanks yet. It does help.
Fire Crow, tutto nelle tue mani. Uomo mette Mortix questo.
It can stop really aggressive pushes from Leon. But yeah, I think a really interesting draft overall for Renegados.
Chiudo.
Yeah, I think this is definitely an interesting draft. Probably a good draft
Fire
as
Crow,
well.
tutto nelle tue
Chasmic
mani.
Gaming, they still have the Bell to deal with Spike's life plant, and they have that
È
last pick
tutto
that's
nelle
totally
tue fottute
possible.
mani.
I think that Chasmac Gaming could very realistically still choose the Fang into this. In fact, I bet they're discussing it right now. Oh, there's the Colonel Ruffs, actually, which is going to be pretty good versus actually all the brawlers from Renegados. They're all single-target brawlers, and this is going to be a pretty useful brawler to have available, especially with that damage boost onto himself and onto Bell. I think Ruffs is going to be a really, really strong pick. Now, let's bring up something else that we don't really talk about a whole lot because we don't have those blind pick phases anymore, is playing Brawl Stars versus your enemy instead of just playing Brawl Stars. I think that might account for...
Cosa serve colonnello ring sta mappa?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Chaz
Subito.
McGee's call so
Oh!
far. I think the Colonel Ruff's
Che ha messo White Claw? L'ha messo con l'ornello rigorosamente.
help with the spawners / the long range shots of Eve. I think overall it's just a very solid choice here, and it's typically one that you can't necessarily
Allora, là se...
last pick.
non
It's
è
very
visibile.
surprising that Ruff survived
Mi sa che è fottuto adesso quel call. Fottuto. Minchia, però Eve voleva, sì, vabbè.
Subito fare credo, subito aggressivo, ragazzi. Ha voglia di vendetta, di vittoria.
Boom, mi gratta. Oddio, cos'è quel predict? Grande che spacca. Firecrow, guarda come si muove. Che problemi.
And now this guy is an absolute powerhouse. Each one of those shots is going to deal so much damage, especially on Doritos. Look at that, takes down more than half of his health. They single shot
minchia,
gliel'ha fatto. Sì, vabbè. A super pass up to Tufa and a goal
Subito chiuso,
for
il KO.
That's how you make a statement. Yeah,
1-1, ragazzi, qua lo vedo un 1-1.
But it was a close one.
Si vede tutto in dominio.
Really bringing the heat in our modes that we're more comfortable in.
Dove andranno in
Where you're
dominio?
also not literally banning out Nanny so that we can't play it. Let's see how game number 2 goes. If there are any parallels between game number 1 and game number 2. Of course, this is when Renegade is going to chance to learn their enemy and start playing Brawl Stars once more.
No, raga, attenzione.
Looks like exactly that is happening, as we already see a 3v1 on the left side.
Che tossico quello.
Yeah, hot start for Renegados. They were going to try and get the stun up. I was looking for the Gale Super there. They fortunately passed the ball just inside time.
Qua stanno subendo.
Gaming here. Doritos going to be trying to advance forward for the ball. Another
Spera due gadget.
down that second twister.
Ok, proiettare.
Remaining. You got to be careful about how early you use those, especially when you're using them on the aggressive side. Because Renegados might need those at a later time.
Sti cosi di merda quanto danno fastidio. Firecrow, subito. È morto Firecrow. Oddio, parata.
Super helpful to have in your back pocket. Good takedown there as well, and Renegados being thrown back a little bit here, a little more.
Io quasi ho boost della... Wow, Firecrow, ottima kill!
Yeah, it looks like Chazmac is going to focus
Firecrow si vendica.
getting positioning inside that middle ring of bushes.
Gelino chiuso, mamma mia ragazzi!
Right? They're not in any rush. It's still
Con
0
spacca.
versus 0. They got a minute 15 on the clock. Plenty of
Bravissimo!
time to work with.
Firecrow, ma qua nella velocità dei
that supply drop down. Marcel's going to be working his way towards it, but Renegados are acutely aware of this fact. They're going to be shooting a whole lot around this supply drop if they can. They've effectively forced Chazmac back, but Doritos overcommits and gets taken down. Tufa now is looking for a goal opportunity, trying to bait out as many shots as he can from Jureg. Marcel is able to get the kill, but not in time to make a score here. Firecrow can get this, and he's going to go, yup, that is exactly what my mind went to. I was like, Firecrow, it's a perfect opportunity for a trick shot. I'm happy.
Mamma ragazzi, lo vedo 1-1. Mamma mia, Leoncino. Entra. Se li schiva tutti, madonna.
Quella pushai. Cioè, ecco, l'ha fatta cazzata.
Oddio, che cacchio di gadget hanno tirato. Firecrow.
Ma ha messo qualche leone o corre? Ah no, ha messo colonnello.
Ma io quello come cacchio fa a non morire?
Ah, l'ho vinto, vero?
Guarda come se la ride.
We see the spins there as well.
Cos'era io sulla flex? Sei pure trollato, minchia. Sta dando il boost, lì.
Emerging there as well. We didn't see any protestos, but we did see him toss a ball at his own goal.
La vedo in 1-1, ragazzi, li hanno distrutti. E si vedrà nell'ultimo match.
Apex.
Raga, mi servono sti punti.
I guess now it's actually a more defensive position to place your ball. Definitely a good bait as well to get Eve to use that gadget and get taken down. Definitely one that we got to be looking out for, or at least crossing our fingers hoping for in future BSC. Because, yeah, we've never seen that before, but, I mean, it worked pretty well. Was it risky? Yeah. Was it high reward? Yes, as well. Ring of Fire is coming up next for set number 3. And this one is... man, we have seen some really, really close matches, some real nail biters, some hearts broken on this map as well. And of course, it's got to end here for such a close match.
Yeah, I mean, I could really see this going either way. I do feel like set number 2 is heavily in favor of Chasmic Gaming for the most part. You know, we had a hot start in game number 2 for the side of Renegados, but overall, I feel like Chasmic Gaming was pretty much in control there. However, set number 1 was a little more back and forth, so we kind of seen the best. We've seen some highs, some lows from both teams. As we enter Ring of Fire, it's all going to come down to the line here again. This was one that I was anticipating to be pretty competitive. I think Renegados is a really solid roster, and on any given day, it definitely has the potential to be a top-tier team in this region.
Yeah, I mean, for this one, to be fair, it's definitely got to go to the double match point all the way to game number 3 within Ring of Fire, because I can hardly see it going any other way. This is going to be such a close matchup. Now, we did see Chasmac actually very their specialty, so when we're looking at both of these teams under a microscope, whose specialty is hot zone? It's so new to the game that I don't think we can really pin it down on either team. It's just going to be who gets those coveted brawlers in the pick phase. Meg is a very strong brawler to have available here. Another one is Eve. Another brawler that you want to be looking out for is like Rico on the side lane. You could also be thinking of like Stu here. Definitely some brawlers that have been left behind by the meta as balancing has changed. But still, you got to pull out all the stops. You got to think about all your options on such a hectic map.
Yeah, I love how you mentioned Meg especially. I think Meg is a really solid lane option here, and one that people forget sometimes just because she's not as relevant on a lot of the other maps, but Hot Zone is definitely going to be a game mode for her, especially the single zone Hot Zone maps like Ring of Fire is. And if you can get Meg with the giant mech into one of those enemy side bushes, it can be really tough to get them out, especially if they pop that gadget, continuously heal. You get sneaky in the bushes with your swipe, it can do about 4,000 damage. I mean, it can be really scary. So I think that's a really good mention too, as somebody to look out for here. You know, it's not always the most played brawler, but certainly one that I can see showing up.
Yeah, Meg is so powerful as a mid because it's not high damage, but it's consistent damage, and it's fast. It's pretty tough to avoid. If you're able to effectively line up your shots at close range, then
Waiuca, una bella Emz, Sandy Emz.
Meg is staying in your mech and then not getting popped out of your mech in a really bad position. She has that shield that she gets as well after she pops out of her mech. That'll give her a little bit more survivability, and in some cases can give her so much survivability that she'll just stay with the shield, tapping people down at long range. It's a little bit frustrating to deal with, but it sure beats getting swiped for 4,000 damage. We have the pick and ban phase coming up. Who gets the first pick? Who gets the counter pick? It all comes down to a coin flip, but the bans are blind and they come through at the same time. Spike and Eve are our bans. That means Fang is available to whoever has that first pick.
Yeah, so kind of what's going through my head here, if I'm in the player's shoes, Ruffs is definitely an option. I actually really like that pick. I think Colonel Ruffs is a very solid, safe first pick. There's a lot of different directions you can go. Crow, another really good one here as well. And just as a mid, I'm kind of thinking more for the Chasmic Gaming side that they could go. They could kind of look towards Pam and Byron, which are very popular globally, and especially in some regions like the EMEA. It looks like Renegados is going to take that. It's a very solid mid option here. Very safe one as well. Especially if, Chasmic Gaming does take a very popular option like Pam here, who's known for her healing capabilities. You know, they have the poison of both Byron and Crow. It can be really difficult to utilize that. Of course, Fang's still on the table as well. Rico's still available. I think there's still some really good options here for Chasmic, but so far I like the draft from both sides, to be honest with you.
All right, and we have the surge pick actually from Chasmac. I do really like that you mentioned Pam actually, because with Scrap Sucker, she's just such a meme, right? She's just so funny, right? You can steal your enemy's ammo. You can prevent them from doing anything with their attacks just by popping a gadget. Like, it's insane, but it's a whole lot of fun. We still got a couple of picks left to see if we get her. There is actually going to be the Bell pick from Chasmac Gaming, and Renegados get to have that final one. Is it going to be Fang? Is it going to be Fang? No one can counter it at this point.
Ho sentito un Fang, mi sa che quello ha messo Fang.
Uses super to stop back down on Fang. Bell can throw the damage amp onto Fang, but still
guarda quello,
is ticking down to decide what that last pick is going to be.
Dai, fate vedere però.
Chasmac are going to be using Colonel Ruffs to get that supply drop on Bell, and using Bell's nest eggs as well. Tara, interesting. And this is a pick that we typically this pick doesn't really work out too well, but it's very effective if you're able to get her in the enemy's bushes and then spawn trap with it.
Tara shows up on this map a decent amount. I think a big inspiration for that, and something that's might get throw off the draft a little bit, is I'm sure they're thinking about things like Rico, you know, maybe somebody like Sprout who show up a decent amount here as well. But with Surge in the mix, that's going to be one of Surge's specialties, is taking out squishy brawlers. So they can't really think that way, you know, it does change things
ha messo Surge.
Tara's going to do a great job in Colonel Ruffs. I'm sure that was part of the reason too. And he's a brawler that I would say shows up, from time to time here. Great takedown to start things off though. But yes, a good point that you mentioned too is it's really pivotal that Tara does get to the enemy bushes, where we see Fire Pro just kind of planted right now. There's really no need for him to get aggressive. You know, he has to charge up a little bit. Power 1 Surge, not the strongest, but as he hits more shots, charges more supers, Surge does become a bigger and bigger problem.
Yep, and here we see that otherworldly support. Those shades being popped by Doritos.
Minchia quanto gli... madonna. No, mi sa che è morto. Quello venettato è fottuto.
The shades keep on getting taken down so fast, it's going to be a real challenge.
No, ha fatto la
Fire Crow as kind of a move of desperation. Now Renegados take the lead on that capture percentage. 2 minutes left to decide who has the higher percentage and who's going to be ending off the match with a W and in their back pocket. And good defense from Doritos.
Madonna, che predict ha fatto.
Firecrow's trying to get that level 3 to be able to flex a range advantage on the enemy. A slow as well, and a kill from Juby. Firecrow is going to get poisoned here, but not taking down. A great lead by Renegados so far.
Ma mi sa che perdono.
I love the way Renegados has played this so far. I think that Tara pick is honestly paying off to be really sneaky.
Mi sa che perdono.
Making some nasty plays with the Crow. The
Oh mio Dio, che gadget.
Supers like we see here nailed that shot as well. Could have easily gone into a sandbag and ruined that entire super to do the damage. Tara super coming in here too. Doritos showing off why this pick could be a good one for them.
Ottima l'alti. Ottimo, raga, attenzione. Firecrow, ottima giocata. C'è la rischia. Oddio Firecrow. Firecrow. Oddio Firecrow. Oh, raga. Attenzione, recupero. Vai quel Franco ha fatto una provata. Guarda.
Right, they want to get in just that last.
Guarda come se la schiva, no, ragazzi. Aia.
Here's a big pull though. Down goes two.
Madonna, Firecrow, raga. Che ci sta fatto Firecrow?
98%. No
ora il boost. L'ho già levato a 2 milioni. Hanno vinto?
Chazmag taking this one by a hair's width.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I mean, you have to make those coordinated pushes. That's a big thing. You know, if you really think about it, every time they get a team wipe, they have to spend all that time respawning. And that's time that the enemy side has to just take down the hot zone. And, you know, it leads up to about 10 to 15% every single time. So a couple team wipes really made up about 30% there. And CMG making a nice comeback there. Goes to show they had some disciplined Brawl Stars in them. They hold tight. And they are now the ones up 1-0 despite the huge Renegados.
Comeback, ragazzi! No, di nuovo, dai! Raga, quel Franco a sinistra, madonna, cosa ha fatto? Subito, così aggressive. Allora, Firecrow. Ok, unità secca. Oi, ottima la qui. Mamma mia ragazzi, Firecrow. Corvette. Mamma mia ragazzi, oddio. Ancora Firecrow, ancora. Seconda fase per Firecrow. No, ma raga, guarda solo Firecrow. È troppo forte. Ma guarda come li becca. No, ho fatto la gabbata. Solo con l'anello sta. Ottima la kill. Vabbè, cosa ha fatto?
This is going to be the comeback from Renegados this time, not from Chazmag. Is it even possible though, Kenny?
Firecrow's my MVP for this game right now.
Firecrow. Madonna, raga, Firecrow che cacchio è? Dai, è vinta! È vinta! Sì! Cosa fa il Byro? Lag! Vai, Corvette! Sì, cacchio! Mamma mia, sti 100 punti a casuccia! Mamma mia ragazzi! Ok raga,
Noi ci vediamo a questa reaction. Ci vediamo nella prossima live. Ciao ragazzi, lo volevo sempre bene. Ciao ragazzi.